According to the U.S. Geological Survey, America imports 70% of its rare earth compounds and metals. According to the International Energy Agency, China controls 90% of global rare earth processing. And yet, according to the Department of Defense, 78% of American weapon systems, including the F-35 fighter jet, depend entirely on these materials. If America knows China controls the supply, why has the Pentagon done almost nothing to change it? Because this was never about mining. According to analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, this was always about processing. And according to the IEA's 2025 Global Critical Minerals Outlook, for 19 of 20 strategic minerals, China is the dominant refiner, with an average market share of 70%. They didn't just win the rare earth war, they won it so completely that we don't even have the equipment to fight back. Welcome to the money signal, where money, power, and economics collide, and nothing is ever as simple as they want you to believe. Over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how China spent 40 years building an unassailable position in the most critical supply chain of the 21st century, using data from the U.S. Geological Survey, the International Energy Agency, and Department of Defense reports. I'm going to walk you through the escalating export restrictions Beijing has imposed since 2023, documented by the Chinese Ministry of Commerce and reported by Reuters, Bloomberg, and CNBC. I'm going to show you why the Pentagon's $540 million investment is a rounding error compared to what's actually needed, and what defense analysts say this means for America's ability to build weapons. And I'm going to show you precisely how this affects your wallet, your electric vehicle, your smartphone, and the price of everything that plugs into a wall. By the end, you'll understand why I believe we're watching one of the most significant strategic defeats in modern American history unfold in real time, and why the window to do anything about it closed years ago. Spoiler. According to Benchmark Mineral Intelligence, the West will still depend on China for 91% of heavy rare earth needs in 2030. That's not a prediction about some distant future. That's 6 years from now. To understand how China won this war, we need to start with a quote that most Americans have never heard, but that defined Beijing's strategy for 4 decades. In 1992, according to historical records from his southern tour, Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping declared, quote, "The Middle East has oil. China has rare earths," end quote. That statement is now carved in stone in Baotou, Inner Mongolia, the city that became China's rare earth capital. According to data from the U.S. Geological Survey, China possesses approximately 37% of global rare earth reserves. That's significant, but it's not dominant. Brazil has 18%, Vietnam has 17%, Russia has 10%, the United States has about 1.3%. So here's the question. If China only has 37% of the reserves, how did they end up controlling 90% of processing? According to research from the Chung Kong Graduate School of Business, the answer is deliberate industrial policy sustained across multiple decades. In the 1980s, Beijing established the National Rare Earth Development and Application Leading Group. They implemented 17% export tax rebates that made Chinese rare earths artificially cheap on global markets. According to USGS historical data, Chinese production surged from 8,500 metric tons in 1985 to over 270,000 tons today. That's a 32-fold increase. While China was subsidizing production and absorbing environmental costs, Western nations were doing the opposite. According to Environmental Protection Agency records, American rare earth processing faced increasingly strict regulations. The Mountain Pass mine in California, once America's primary source, couldn't compete with Chinese prices. According to MP Materials corporate filings, it closed in 2002. At its peak in 2011, according to the U.S. Geological Survey, China controlled 97.7% of global rare earth production. They had achieved near total monopoly. Gracelyn Bascarin, director of the Critical Mineral Security Program at CSIS, explained the strategic implications. She stated, quote, "Simply diversifying sources of mined rare earth ore is not enough to break China's stranglehold on these critical supply chains. Without urgently building global processing capacity, new mining projects will continue feeding directly into China's control, perpetuating the very dependency the United States is seeking to escape," end quote. This is the insight most people miss. The bottleneck isn't mining. The bottleneck is processing. And according to the IEA, China controls approximately 91% of rare earth separation and refining capacity globally. But this is only part of the picture. The real mechanism goes deeper. Now here's where the official narrative breaks down. When people hear rare earths, they think about rocks in the ground. They think if America just opens more mines, the problem solves itself. According to the data, that assumption is catastrophically wrong. Here's what makes rare earths different from other commodities. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, separating individual rare earth elements from ore requires highly specialized chemical processes. The 17 rare earth elements have nearly identical chemical properties. Separating them requires hundreds of stages of solvent extraction, and the technology to do this efficiently took China decades to develop. According to reporting from the Financial Times, when General Motors' subsidiary Magnequench was acquired by Chinese interests in the mid-1990s, critical manufacturing technology for rare earth magnets transferred to China. That wasn't just a business transaction. That was a strategic acquisition of irreplaceable know-how. John Maslin, an analyst at Vulcan Elements, explained why this matters. He stated, quote, "China only mines 55% of the world's rare earths. They manufacture almost 95% of the magnets. And if they do that, they also make almost 100% of the manufacturing equipment. If you have one piece of Chinese equipment in your production line, China has a kill switch and can really shut down operations," end quote. Think about what that means. Even if America opened 100 new mines tomorrow, according to this analysis, those mines would likely need Chinese equipment to process the ore, Chinese technology to separate the elements, Chinese facilities to manufacture the magnets. The war was never about who controls the rocks. It was about who controls the machines that turn rocks into products. And here's where it gets dangerous. According to IEA data from 2025, China's share of critical mineral processing is staggering. For rare earths, 91%. For lithium, 65%. For cobalt, 74%. For graphite, 100% of processing capacity. The IEA report stated explicitly, quote, "For 19 of 20 important strategic minerals, China is the leading refiner, with an average market share of 70%, end quote. This isn't a supply chain vulnerability. According to the data, this is supply chain capture. One nation controls the transformation of raw materials into usable components for virtually every advanced technology, and Beijing has demonstrated they will weaponize this advantage. The evidence for this pattern isn't theoretical. It's documented throughout history. In September 2010, according to reporting from Reuters and the Financial Times, a Chinese fishing trawler collided with Japanese Coast Guard vessels near the disputed Senkaku Islands. Japan detained the Chinese captain. Within days, according to records from Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, China implemented an undeclared embargo on rare earth exports to Japan. No official announcement, no formal policy. Shipments simply stopped. According to data from the World Economic Forum, Japan at that time depended on China for 89% of its rare earth supply. The embargo was devastating. According to market data from Trading Economics, rare earth prices exploded from $9,461 per metric ton in 2009 to $66,957 by 2011. That's a 600% increase in 2 years. Japan's response, according to research from the Institute of Energy Economics Japan, was a 100 billion yen emergency program to reduce dependency. They invested in Australian mining projects, developed recycling technology, and redesigned products to use fewer rare earths. According to the World Economic Forum, Japan reduced its rare earth dependency from 89% to approximately 60% over the following decade. That's meaningful progress, but it took 10 years of focused effort, and they still depend on China for the majority of supply. The lesson from 2010 was clear. China would use rare earths as a strategic weapon. The question was whether Western nations would learn from Japan's experience. According to the data, they did not. There's a deeper historical pattern here that I think is worth examining. According to research from economic historians at the London School of Economics, resource control has determined geopolitical power for centuries. In the 19th century, according to historical records, Britain dominated global trade because they controlled coal and steel production. In the 20th century, according to energy historians, control of oil shaped the rise and fall of empires. According to analysis from the Council on Foreign Relations, the 21st century will be defined by control of critical minerals. Whoever controls the materials that power advanced technology controls the future of manufacturing, defense, and energy. China understood this transition earlier than Western policymakers. According to historical analysis from the Peterson Institute, while American companies were outsourcing manufacturing to reduce costs in the 1990s, Beijing was acquiring strategic assets and building processing capacity. According to data from the World Trade Organization, China filed 23 intellectual property claims related to rare earth processing between 2000 and 2020, systematically protecting the technology they had developed. Meanwhile, according to U.S. Patent Office data, American rare earth processing patents declined by over 60% during the same period. The knowledge gap compounds the physical infrastructure gap. According to analysis from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, fewer than 50 American engineers specialize in rare earth metallurgy. China trains over 1,000 annually through dedicated university programs. According to Department of Energy workforce analysis, rebuilding American technical expertise in rare earth processing would require a decade of focused educational investment, even if physical infrastructure existed. This is why I keep emphasizing that mining isn't the bottleneck. The bottleneck is human capital, processing technology, and integrated supply chains. These take generations to build and can be destroyed in years. Fast forward to 2023, and according to the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, Beijing began implementing a new wave of export restrictions far more comprehensive than the 2010 embargo. In July and August 2023, according to Reuters, China announced export license requirements for gallium and germanium, two critical minerals essential for semiconductors and fiber optic cables. According to U.S. Geological Survey data, China controls 98% of global gallium refining and 60% of germanium. In December 2023, according to the Ministry of Commerce, Beijing banned exports of rare earth extraction and separation technologies. This was unprecedented. They weren't just restricting materials. They were restricting the knowledge needed to process materials independently. On December 3, 2024, according to Al Jazeera and Reuters, China announced an outright ban on exports of gallium, germanium, and antimony to the United States. This came exactly one day after Washington announced new semiconductor restrictions against China. The Ministry of Commerce statement, according to official Chinese government records, justified the move as necessary to, quote, safeguard national security and interests and fulfill international non-proliferation obligations, end quote. Then, on April 4th, 2025, according to reporting from CNBC and Bloomberg, following what the Trump administration called Liberation Day tariffs, China announced export licensing requirements for 7 medium and heavy rare earths: samarium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, lutetium, scandium, yttrium. According to defense industry analysis, these are precisely the elements most critical for military applications. Samarium cobalt magnets operate in high-temperature environments like jet engines. Dysprosium provides heat resistance for powerful permanent magnets. Terbium enables precision sensors and actuators. The MOFCOM spokesperson's statement in October 2025, according to official Chinese government records, made Beijing's thinking explicit. The spokesperson stated, quote, China has taken note of the important uses of medium and heavy rare earths and related items in the military field. China, as a responsible major country, employs export controls on related items according to the law in order to better defend world peace and regional stability, end quote. Read that statement carefully. Beijing is explicitly linking rare earth export controls to military applications. They're not hiding their strategic intent, they're announcing it. The question is, where does America stand in this sequence? Let's run the checklist using current data from 2024 and 2025. According to U.S. Geological Survey data, American rare earth mining production in 2024 was approximately 43,000 metric tons. China produced 270,000 tons. America mines about 16% of what China mines. Check. According to IEA data, American rare earth processing capacity is approximately 0% for heavy rare earths and minimal for light rare earths. Virtually all American mined ore must be sent elsewhere for processing. Check. According to Department of Defense reports, the United States has one domestic producer of rare earth permanent magnets, producing approximately 1,000 tons annually. China produces 300,000 tons. Check. According to the Government Accountability Office report 24-107176, approximately 78% of U.S. weapons programs contain components dependent on rare earth magnets. That's roughly 1,900 weapon systems and 80,000 distinct parts. Check. According to Department of Defense documentation, the F-35 Lightning II contains approximately 920 pounds of rare earth materials per aircraft. The Virginia-class submarine contains 9,200 pounds per vessel. The Arleigh Burke destroyer contains 5,200 pounds per ship. Check. According to the U.S. Geological Survey's October 2025 assessment, samarium was designated the #1 critical mineral at highest risk of supply chain vulnerabilities. Lockheed Martin is the largest American consumer of samarium for defense applications. Check. According to these metrics, America is fully dependent on a strategic competitor for materials essential to national defense. The dependency exists, the vulnerability is documented, and the adversary has demonstrated willingness to weaponize supply. So what has America done about it? According to Department of Defense press releases, the Pentagon has committed $540 million to support critical mineral supply chains. This includes a $400 million equity stake in MP Materials, making the Defense Department the largest shareholder at 15%. It includes $258 million to Lynas USA for a Texas heavy rare earth refinery, and it includes a $150 million loan for heavy rare earth separation capacity. According to the Department of Energy, a guaranteed price floor of $110 per kilogram for neodymium praseodymium oxide was established, nearly double the current Chinese market price of approximately $60 per kilogram. These investments sound significant. $540 million is real money, but context matters. According to analysis from the Climate Security Initiative at George Washington University, Crescencia Maurer and Sharon Squassoni concluded in July 2025, quote, "The time horizon to build out the U.S. supply chain remains at 15 to 20 years, and this is not made shorter by tariffs, a critical minerals deal with Ukraine, nor 5 executive orders focused on energy and mineral production," end quote. 15 to 20 years. That's the timeline experts project even with current investments. According to the IEA's baseline projections, by 2040, China will still control 78% of rare earth refining, down from 92% in 2023, but still overwhelming dominance. According to Benchmark Mineral Intelligence, quote, "The West will be dependent on China for 91% of their heavy rare earth needs in 2030, which is a modest reduction from 99% in 2024, end quote. Let me be direct about what I see in this data. $540 million sounds like a lot. But according to industry analysts, building meaningful rare earth supply chain independence would require $50 billion or more in coordinated Western investment. That's roughly 15 to 25 times current committed levels. According to permitting data analyzed by the Cato Institute, the average timeline for U.S. mine development is 29 years from discovery to production. 29 years. China can impose export restrictions with a single government announcement. America needs 3 decades to respond. This is not a close fight. According to every metric I can find, America lost the rare earth war before most policymakers even recognized a war was being fought. Let me break down what successful countries have done and why America hasn't followed their example. According to data from the Australian Department of Industry, Lynas Corporation became the world's largest non-Chinese rare earth producer through sustained government support. The Australian government provided loan guarantees, streamlined permitting, and offered tax incentives over 15 years. According to Lynas corporate filings, they achieved profitability only in 2021, more than a decade after initial investment. In May 2025, according to reporting from Mining Weekly, Lynas became the first company outside China to commercially produce dysprosium oxide, a heavy rare earth critical for high-temperature magnets. This was celebrated as a breakthrough, but according to production data, Lynas produces approximately 500 tons of heavy rare earth concentrate annually. China produces over 50,000 tons. According to analysis from the Center for a New American Security, Japan's response to the 2010 crisis offers lessons America has largely ignored. Japan invested in recycling technology that now recovers approximately 15% of rare earth demand from end-of-life products. Japan funded overseas mining partnerships in Australia and Vietnam. Japan redesigned products to reduce rare earth content by 30% in some applications. According to Japanese Ministry of Economy data, these measures cost over $20 billion across government and private sector investment over 15 years. The result was reducing dependency from 89% to 60%. Still majority dependent, but meaningfully improved resilience. America, according to Congressional Research Service analysis, has spent roughly 1/10 of what Japan invested, while starting from a position of deeper dependency. According to analysis from the Brookings Institution, effective mineral security requires 3 simultaneous investments. First, domestic mining and processing capacity. Second, international partnerships for diversified supply. Third, technology to reduce material requirements or enable substitution. According to their assessment, American policy has focused almost exclusively on the first category while underinvesting in the second and third. The European Union faces similar challenges. According to EU data, the bloc depends on China for 98% of rare earth needs, including 100% of heavy rare earths. The Critical Raw Materials Act adopted in March 2024 sets targets of 10% domestic extraction, 40% domestic processing, and a 65% cap on dependency from any single country by 2030. According to EU documents, €3 billion have been committed through the RE-Source EU action plan, but the same timeline problem applies. According to Rystad Energy Analysis, European rare earth projects won't reach meaningful scale until the mid-2030s at the earliest. The impacts aren't theoretical, they're happening now. According to reporting from CNBC in June 2025, following China's April export controls, rare earth magnet exports plummeted 51% in a single month, far exceeding seasonal norms. Exports to the United States fell 58.5% year over year. According to Wood Mackenzie analysis, Thomas Jones, senior analyst, observed, quote, "The sudden drop in exports has exposed the automotive industry's vulnerability to supply chain disruptions," end quote. According to European Automotive Supplier Association, CLEPA, several European auto supplier plants and production lines have already been shut down due to rare earth shortages. According to their analysis, only approximately 25% of export license applications submitted by automotive suppliers to Chinese authorities have been approved. According to reporting from CNBC, Ford stopped production of the Explorer at its Chicago plant for 1 week in May 2025 due to supply chain disruptions. BMW reported supplier networks affected by China's export curbs. According to data from India's Society of Manufacturers of Electric Vehicles, Bajaj Auto saw production of the Chetak electric scooter cut in half in July 2025, producing only 10,824 units versus 20,384 the previous year. According to S&P Global Mobility data, 94.7% of global electric vehicle motors require rare earth elements. The EV transition depends entirely on materials China controls. The price impacts are severe. According to Trading Economics data, gallium prices surged 83% in 2025. Germanium climbed from $1,350 per kilogram before restrictions to over $6,300 by early 2026. That's nearly a 400% increase. According to IEA modeling, a 5 times price surge in battery materials would increase battery pack costs by 20%. A 10 times increase would raise prices 40 to 50%, quote, substantially reducing their competitiveness, end quote. According to SFA Oxford analysis, quote, the impact will cascade through global industries and ultimately reach consumers, raising prices for electric vehicles, electronics, and clean energy technologies while slowing the pace of the global energy transition, end quote. Here's what this means for you specifically. According to data from the Consumer Technology Association, the average American household contains approximately 400 pounds of electronics, requiring rare earth elements. Your smartphone uses multiple rare earth elements for the screen, speakers, and vibration motor. Your laptop uses rare earths in the hard drive and speakers. Your television uses rare earths in the display. According to Bankrate analysis, disruptions in rare earth supply chains could add hundreds of dollars to the cost of consumer electronics over the next several years. Electric vehicles, which contain approximately 1 to 2 pounds of rare earth elements in their motors, could see price increases of $2,000 to $5,000 per vehicle, according to industry estimates. According to wind energy industry data, a 3.5 megawatt direct drive wind turbine requires approximately 600 kilograms of rare earth elements. The clean energy transition depends on materials that one nation controls. This creates a profound strategic dilemma that I think policymakers haven't fully internalized. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, achieving global climate targets requires tripling wind energy capacity by 2035. According to the IEA, that requires increasing rare earth supply by over 300% in the same timeframe. According to the data, there is no plausible scenario where this supply expansion happens without Chinese cooperation or without Chinese supply chain participation. The materials don't exist at scale anywhere else. The processing capacity doesn't exist anywhere else. The technology to build processing capacity exists almost exclusively in China. According to analysis from Columbia University's Center on Global Energy Policy, Western nations face an impossible choice: slow the clean energy transition to reduce dependency on China, or accelerate the transition and deepen the strategic vulnerability. According to my reading of Chinese government statements, Beijing understands this leverage perfectly. The export restrictions have been carefully calibrated, tight enough to demonstrate capability, loose enough to maintain essential supply. This is coercive bargaining documented by political scientists, not economic policy. Here's what I expect to happen over the next 5 years based on the patterns I see in the data. First, according to pricing trends, rare earth and critical mineral costs will remain elevated, adding 2 to 5% to the cost of electric vehicles, consumer electronics, and clean energy equipment. Second, according to project timelines, Western processing capacity will remain minimal through 2030. The IEA projects 78% Chinese control of refining by 2040. Most Western projects in the pipeline will experience delays, cost overruns, or cancellation. Third, according to geopolitical analysis from the RAND Corporation, China will likely modulate export restrictions in response to broader diplomatic objectives. Rare earth supply will function as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations, technology disputes, and Taiwan-related tensions. Fourth, according to defense procurement data, weapon system costs will increase and production schedules will face disruption. The F-35 program already faces cost pressures. Rare earth scarcity will compound existing problems. Fifth, according to consumer behavior research, most Americans will remain unaware of the strategic vulnerability until a crisis makes it impossible to ignore. The 2010 Japan embargo caused brief concern and no sustained policy response. I expect the same pattern unless supply disruption affects everyday products visibly. According to defense budget analysis from the Congressional Research Service, if rare earth prices remain elevated, the Pentagon's procurement costs for major weapon systems could increase by billions of dollars annually. These costs ultimately flow to taxpayers. The national security implications are immediate and severe. According to reporting from Defense News, in September 2022, the Pentagon temporarily suspended F-35 deliveries after discovering a Chinese-made samarium cobalt magnet in the Honeywell-assembled engine lubricant pump, a Chinese component inside America's most advanced fighter jet. According to Government Accountability Office report 16-161, similar discoveries in 2014 found Chinese materials in B-1B bombers and F-16 fighters. According to GAO analysis, the Department of Defense's approach to rare earth risks was, quote, fragmented, end quote, and concluded that revamping the defense supply chain could take, quote, 15 years or more, end quote. According to the National Defense Stockpile Analysis, there's a $13.5 billion gap between current holdings and requirements for critical materials. Representative Pat Harrigan of the House Armed Services Committee stated the situation directly. He said, quote, rare earth magnets are the foundation of modern defense systems, clean energy, and advanced manufacturing. Yet the United States remains dangerously reliant on China, which dominates global production and processing, end quote. I want to be clear about what I'm seeing in this data, and I want to offer my own assessment. According to every metric I've examined, China executed one of the most successful industrial strategies in modern history. Over 4 decades, they built integrated capabilities from mining through processing to manufacturing, while Western nations allowed market forces to offshore production and watched their technical expertise disappear. The current investment programs, while substantial in absolute terms, arrive decades late and fall far short of requirements. According to the data, we are not watching a competition. We are watching the aftermath of a competition that ended before most Americans knew it was happening. I've spent considerable time studying resource economics and supply chain vulnerabilities, and I believe the rare earth situation represents something more significant than most analysts acknowledge. This isn't comparable to oil dependency in the 1970s. According to that historical experience, America faced a cartel of suppliers who wanted to maximize revenue. Price spikes were painful but manageable. Alternative sources existed. Efficiency improvements reduced demand. According to the structural differences I see today, rare earth dependency is more dangerous. There's effectively one supplier, not a cartel. That supplier is a strategic competitor, not a neutral commercial actor. Here's what concerns me most from a strategic perspective. According to Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company data, Taiwan produces over 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductors. According to Department of Defense assessments, Taiwan faces escalating security threats from mainland China. According to the obvious question this raises, what happens to rare earth supply if Taiwan becomes a focal point of US-China tensions? According to the pattern of restrictions I've documented, Beijing has demonstrated willingness to use export controls as diplomatic leverage. Rare earths would likely be an early escalation tool in any serious confrontation. According to current projections, meaningful rare earth supply chain independence is 15 to 20 years away, assuming everything goes right. Current permitting timelines suggest 29 years for mine development. Technology transfer restrictions mean we cannot simply buy Chinese processing equipment. Expertise gaps mean we have few engineers trained in rare earth metallurgy. And here's what concerns me most. According to Chinese government statements, the current export restrictions are framed as suspensions that can be lifted if diplomatic conditions improve. This means Beijing has calibrated their response to maintain leverage. They haven't deployed their full capability. They've demonstrated it. According to analysis from the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, quote, China's rare earth export restrictions and other countries' responses represent the main battleground of economic security, end quote. I believe that's correct, and I believe, according to every data point I can find, America is losing that battle. The signal has been there for decades. According to Deng Xiaoping's statement in 1992, China telegraphed their intentions more than 30 years ago. According to the 2010 Japan embargo, they demonstrated their willingness to weaponize supply. According to the 2023 through 2025 restrictions, they're implementing a comprehensive strategy. The data shows this clearly. The question is whether anyone in a position of authority is listening. History doesn't repeat, but it does warn. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.